Hi, everyone. This is Ashley Halliday-Schmann, the director of the Northwest Michigan Coalition to End Homelessness. Today, we're going to be talking about the Northwest Michigan Coalition to End Homelessness Rapid Rehousing Written Standards. This is not intended to be a full training on what rapid rehousing is as a program, but these are just the basic standards that any provider in the coalition who is providing rapid rehousing services should follow and abide by. So it's a great just primer to the work to end homelessness related to rapid rehousing, and it's a good first training session for folks who are in the field. This was approved by the Northwest Michigan Coalition to End Homelessness Executive Committee and Steering Committee in March of 2021. I'm going to try to make this a little bit bigger to see here. So again, not going to get into completely what rapid rehousing is as a program and all of the nitty-gritty that makes up a good program, but really trying to understand a very general approach to rapid rehousing and some of the guidelines that we would like all rapid rehousing providers to abide by in administering this program throughout the 10-county region. So rapid rehousing is an eligible activity within the Northwest Michigan Coalition to End Homelessness for the Continuum of Care program. So there are different funding sources that come to agencies within the coalition for rapid rehousing. Some of those, I believe at this time, there are 3 different sources of funding for rapid rehousing. One is the HUD Continuum of Care program that comes directly through our COC for rapid rehousing. There's the Emergency Solutions Grant, which is administered by MISHDA, that has different regulations. And then there's funding through the Michigan Balance of State Continuum of Care for our Balance of State communities that provide rapid rehousing as well. So again, if you are a provider, you need to abide by the rules and regulations of those programs, but also adhering to these best practices. So rapid rehousing should adhere to a housing first philosophy. You can also see our housing first training on the coalition website that you should probably have watched prior to this. So we just need to make sure that all programs offered through the coalition are adhering to housing first, which is the basic philosophy that people need basic necessities like food, place to live, things like that, before attending to anything else less critical, like getting a job, budgeting, attending to substance use disorders, mental health issues. All of those things can be taken care of once people get housed. We want to make sure we house people first. Another tenet of this work would be around housing choice, and we'll get into that later in this document. But housing choice is really a core component of a housing first philosophy. We want to make sure we are not placing people into housing. We want to make sure they are an active participant in the housing search process and that they have choice in where they choose to live. Rapid rehousing is an intervention designed to help individuals and families exit homelessness as quickly as possible, return to permanent housing, and achieve stability in that housing. It is offered without preconditions. So no rapid rehousing program under the coalition is able to put prerequisites on the program. For example, no program offered through the coalition is able to say you have to get a job, or you have to have income, you have to be sober, you have to go through XYZ treatment program in order to have access to rapid rehousing. The only precondition is you have to be homeless. So we can't put any of those other preconditions on rapid rehousing programs. Just have to be homeless, have to meet eligibility criteria, of course, but none of those other things are part of eligibility. And then here's where we're going to get into really the core components of rapid rehousing. Folks are not mandated to participate in every single component type, but all of them have to be offered, if that makes sense. So rapid rehousing core components are housing identification and relocation, short and medium-term rental assistance, and move-in assist or financial move-in assistance, and then third, case management and housing stabilization services. If someone comes to you who has already been targeted for rapid rehousing with a unit that they chose and it meets criteria for that program, you don't have to search for them, right? So they don't have to utilize every single component of the program, but they need to know that those are offered for them. Confidentiality, I will not talk about here since it's something we adhere to at all coalition programs. Eligibility will differ a little bit depending on the programs that I mentioned before. So here in this document, again, we're going to be talking about eligibility as related to the HUD COC program. So that should really take care of anything HUD COC rapid rehousing, including the youth projects. Those do have some age limits on it, but generally outside of that, we're talking about HUD rapid rehousing that goes directly to Greater Grand Traverse area, 5 counties. And then we're talking about the DHHS programs in the balance of state that are administered, like I said, through DHS in the balance of state continuum of care, but they are the same HUD funding, right? So when we get into MSHDA, ESG, rapid rehousing, or supportive services for veteran families, those might have different eligibility requirements, and those are listed here in the links. So again, only talking about HUD COC rapid rehousing, which eligibility is literally homeless category 1, which means these things, and we'll get into that in another training, or imminent risk. Right now, our prioritization procedures at the coalition do not prioritize folks who are in category 2 or at imminent risk of homelessness. We're solely focusing on category 1, literally homeless. But technically, category 2 folks can be served here. We're just not currently prioritizing that population. And then, of course, fleeing violence. And for category 4, I do want to give a little snippet of information on category 4. So category 4 is not solely fleeing domestic violence. It's a person fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or other dangerous or life-threatening conditions that relate to violence against the individual or a family member. Okay, so it's basically a long way of saying fleeing violence. All right, and then we need to think about that they're fleeing violence and they have nowhere else to go, and they lack the support networks needed to obtain other housing. Okay, so I just wanted to be really clear on what fleeing violence is. It's not just fleeing domestic violence. And again, this is just noted in here, the COC program NOFA, or the Notice of Funding Availability, may impose additional eligibility requirements not reflected in the regulations above. So that would be something like the YHDP or the youth programs offered, you have to meet certain age requirements there. So sometimes they'll differ, but typically not. Here are the standards for documenting eligibility for rapid rehousing. Again, this is a different training, so I won't get into that here. I would just note that if you are trying to document fleeing domestic violence or fleeing any type of violence, I would pay close attention to the documentation required here. It's a little bit tricky to document that. All right, so getting back into rapid rehousing. So prioritization for rapid rehousing follows the Northwest Michigan Coalition to End Homelessness prioritization policy document, which is also listed on our website, and it has a short training associated with that. People cannot enter the rapid rehousing program, any rapid rehousing program, without going through the prioritization policy procedure. There are not side doors to the program. It's all happening through prioritization and the coordinated entry process. Some of the principles I think are important to talk about here, within the limits of a participant's income, a rapid rehousing program should have the ability to help access units that are desirable and sustainable, those that are in neighborhoods they want to live in and that have access to transportation, are close to employment, and that are safe. So again, really a long way of saying the participant in the program needs to have choice about where they're living. And we are not in the business of placing people in communities or neighborhoods that they have absolutely no desire to live in. That's not best practice, although sometimes it is tough because of limited housing stock. Sometimes in less desirable neighborhoods or communities, there are places more readily available than in the heart of the city center where most folks want to live because it's easier to access services. However, it doesn't always work once we do house people where they don't want to be based on limited choice. So it's a fine line to walk, and your supervisors and your program support staff will be able to help you through that. There needs to be housing identification efforts specifically designed and implemented to actively recruit and retain landlords and property managers ready and willing to rent to our program participants. And you really want here to recruit landlords and property managers who aren't doing extensive background checks or credit checks or things like that that might rule out some of our folks getting access to the housing. So again, that's another training related to rapid rehousing and all housing programs throughout the coalition, but I wanted to make sure we highlight that here. Program staffing. So when we're staffing up for rapid rehousing, it's a critical function of the rapid rehousing case manager to be able to identify and recruit landlords and encourage them to rent to young adults or homeless households, what have you, whoever you're working with. That is a core function of the job. We're trying to build that out in different ways to offer more support through the coalition for that effort or around that effort of landlord recruitment, but it is a critical function of the rapid rehousing case manager's job. All right, so program policies, a lot of these will be covered in the actual funding documents that you have for your particular program. But these are the high level program policies that we want y'all to adhere to through the coalition. So the program has written policies and procedures for landlord recruitment activities. So that would be internally, your agency's program has policies and procedures related to that. Your program offers a standard basic level of support to all landlords who lease to program participants. Program has a detailed policy for the type of assistance provided to help households find and secure housing. So that's really in the participant agreement, what they're agreeing to, what you're going to offer, what they say they need, and how you're going to work together to achieve the goals of the program participant. Before any housing assistance will be provided on behalf of the program participant, we have to do a unit inspection for HUD rapid rehousing. It has to meet housing quality standards or the HQS inspection. Other programs rely on habitability standards. So again, it just depends on the program type. And then here are the program activities. So these program activities are really focused on housing identification, which is one of the core components of rapid rehousing. So again, this is talking about landlord recruitment. I'm not going to read the document word for word, but what we really want to focus on here is that we make sure that rapid rehousing case managers are aware that this is a key function and a critical function of their jobs. At the coalition, like I said, we can offer support, we can do mailings, we can help with attending some landlord events to recruit more, we can do advertisement, marketing, anything like that for you guys. We can even, sometimes depending on funding, employ a housing locator. However, this is really talking too about the landlord relationship after you house someone. So really being an added support for the landlord. And that can be landlord mediation. It can be education around issues related to homelessness if they so choose. I mean, I wouldn't start with that, but it's really just being a liaison for the landlord while you're trying to encourage the tenant to hold that relationship ongoing. In the beginning, the landlord relationship will be a lot focused on the case manager and the tenant and the landlord all working together. And as time goes on, especially through rapid rehousing programs, the housing-based case manager wants to step back a little bit and model and teach the tenants how to actively participate in their housing and connect directly with the landlord, because you won't be there forever. And we want to make sure that they have the skills required in order to maintain those relationships going forward. Another big thing here is when you're closing a case, it is very, very important. And I know rapid rehousing programs have documents related to this, but we want to make sure we're providing landlords that you're closing the case, and that also where they can go if they have issues in the future, or if they need to fill units. We want them coming back. We want them, even though we might not be working with a specific tenant anymore, the next time they have an opening, we want them to call us before they list it, right? So we can fill it. You want to always be offering a very high level of communication and support to every landlord that we work with. So the next core component is rent move-in assistance and ongoing rental subsidy. Here, this is talking a lot about how much rental subsidy we're providing to tenants. We never want to approach a tenant and say, or a program participant rather, and say, you have X amount of rental assistance to utilize on our program. What we want to do is encourage them through a strengths-based model to say, what is the least amount of assistance you think you'll need from us in order to maintain this housing on your own? And that leaves them in the driver's seat of their own housing. Sometimes if it's someone who we have known for a long time to have experienced chronic homelessness, this might be a bridge to permanent supportive housing, and that conversation might look a little different. But in the traditional sense, people who are able to increase their income and maintain housing on their own, we want to be having these conversations all the time. When can you begin to pay your rent on your own? And when can you, or when do you think you'll no longer need our services? As far as the ongoing subsidy, so HUD COC program doesn't require folks under this NOFA to pay a portion of their income as rent yet under our coalition guidelines. So HUD encourages that if they have income, they are supposed to be paying 30% of their income towards their rent. However, we have a disclosure statement in our, or not a disclosure statement, but our continuum of care says that we leave that up to the program participants and the agencies administering the program. So our coalition doesn't have a statement saying these are the max amount of months you can receive, or this is when you need to start paying, and all of that. We leave that up to the agencies and the program participants. Each housing stability plan needs to have an exit strategy, and all of those documents are also listed in the rapid rehousing best practices training. So I'll leave it there with that. Best practices around rent and move-in assistance we already talked about. Rapid rehousing case management and services. Again, I'm not going to go into it a lot here. That's a different training, but here you'll find a very high level or theoretical approach to how we want providers doing rapid rehousing. So it needs to be flexible in intensity. It's only offering essential assistance until the participant demonstrates the need for or requests additional help. Meaning we don't have a very specific curriculum that applies to every single household. We have a curriculum that we can pull from when the participant requests that, but it's all participant-led. And that really is the first bullet point. It should be client-driven. Rapid Rehousing Case Management uses a strengths-based approach to empower clients. It's provided in-home. And let's see, where else here? Oh, we already talked about it's intended to be in the participant's home. It is not compliance is not mandated by a federal or state regulation. It's offered, and they have voluntary participation in programs. But we do want to always be offering rapid rehousing as a housing program that comes with supports. We're not offering it as housing only. It's housing and supports. We really want to encourage folks to participate in that. Let's see, and a lot of this I'm just going through quickly because this stuff is in depth provided in the housing support training or housing-based case management training. But again, it applies to rapid rehousing, and it's all listed here. And then finally, here's our regulations, or I'm sorry, regulations, our recommendations around closing the case. So this, again, is listed. It's actually a document that you can use in the housing-based case management curriculum, exit planning document that we would like every rapid rehousing, or actually every housing program under the coalition to utilize. But again, we want to make sure that all referrals are made. So prior to closing the case, we want to make sure every referral that the participant has requested and that you as a case manager have seen as a necessity are provided to the client, and that you help facilitate those if needed. And then you're also following up the landlord and saying that you're closing the case. This is the last month we're paying. And all of that stuff should be happening as time goes on. It shouldn't be, okay, this is the last month, goodbye. We should have been having those conversations over time, as we will know in the rapid rehousing case management training. However, we again want to communicate with the landlord. More communication, the better, typically. And then a lot of this relates to record keeping and things of that sort that I'm not going to get into right now. And so finally, the following documents are also provided in the Rapid Rehousing Written Standards, which is the prioritization policy. Again, we should be adhering to this anyway, and there's a document related to this and a training that's separate from this, with the assumptions listed. And then also warm transfer guidelines are also included in this document. And those are very important as we transfer clients from homelessness into housing. However, it's a different training and different documents. So really, again, these are the written standards. These are the core components of rapid rehousing. And these are how, at a pretty high level or general overview of what rapid rehousing is. Again, we'll get into the nitty-gritty in a different day in a different training. And if you ever have any questions about any of these documents, please reach out to me. My email is ashley@endhomelessnessnmi.org, or you can find all these documents and trainings on our website at endhomelessnessnmi.org. Thanks so much for listening today, and have a great day.